got this massive, big, almost could drive it into you all. And it's a really weird thing standing back here when you're all there. But that's okay. Who's heard of the Young and Well CRC? Oh, a few people. That's good. We're funded by the Department of Innovation, and I suppose my job today is to convince you that play is good for your mental health. Can I just get just a few shout-outs from the audience? What do you currently do to look after your mental health? Don't exercise. Don't be shy. Your friends. Dance. Sleep, yeah. Movies. Eat. Did someone say champagne? I'm sure it was the girl in the yellow top. Okay. So the Young and Well CRC was set up in 2010, funded by the Department of Innovation, and basically what it does is look at how technology can be used to improve the mental health and the well-being of young people. And by the end of this 20-minute session, I've been told that it's 20 minutes and that I'll get a little wave at 5 minutes because I talk a lot and I talk very quickly. You will leave this room feeling convinced that technologies are here to change the way in which we think about mental health and well-being. And you will embrace the technologies that you all love and use, and you will no longer feel guilty about it. You will actually make your claim to fame in that I am looking after my mental health, and the Young and Well CRC told me it was so. Well, that's the goal. So a little bit about me. I head up the Young and Well CRC with a fabulous team who are sitting in this front little row here. Woohoo! And a big special call out and thanks to Emma B, there's two Emmas, Emma B for putting together the Prezi and Emma E for organising and inviting me along today. And again, I'm particularly excited to be here today. It's a fabulous morning and event and fantastic that it runs across the world. So I'm also a mum, and these are my three gorgeous little children. And as I got into the lift today and Kirst asked me how I'd gone, I said last night I had Harry in bed sucking his fingers going, and that I hadn't had much sleep, and she said, yeah, that's probably not a good thing to talk about in a lift as you're about to go into a very uber cool space. But that's okay. So Harry is my littlest. He's 3, and he's my most delicate, sensitive petal. He's the one that if I slightly raise my voice, he collapses onto the ground in tears. You're angry, Mummy, you're angry, Mummy. And I said, no, Mummy's not angry. Mummy just wants you to go to bed so I can have some dinner. So he's a very delicate, sensitive petal. Holly, who's the one that's grabbing her brother's t-shirt and trying to either push him into the pool or make sure that he doesn't jump in. Holly's robust, so she's almost 5. She's the sort of little kid that she'll feel sick and say to me, Mummy, I need to vomit, run to the toilet, bleh, vomit, and then come back out and say, well, now I'd like some chocolate cake. So she is incredibly robust. And then there's my beautiful 7-year-old Angus, who was born with Down syndrome and at about the age of 2.5 was diagnosed with autism. So Angus's life has been dictated to by lots of early intervention, lots of therapeutic sessions, and Angus at the age of 2 had a few words but lost them at 2.5, and that's just a part of the autism. So Angus's brain is wired incredibly different to the other two. The other two know how to play together, they know how to interact, they know how to engage, they know how to do a whole host of things. And Angus doesn't. So it came as a huge surprise to me one Easter Sunday morning when my mum and dad were over, and I'd just finished having a conversation with my dad about the iPad, and Dad saying, oh, I could never use that iPad thing. It's too hard. How on earth would I understand what to do? And I looked over and there was Angus in the corner with the iPad, and he had it open, and there's a game called Hide the Rabbit. I don't know if anyone's ever played the game, but it's kind of a kid's game. But he was flicking through and the rabbit hides in a photograph. So it's photographs from all over the world of beautiful places. And if you find the rabbit and you click on the rabbit, it pops up and it says hello in a number of different languages. So there's Angus flicking and playing and getting the rabbit to say konnichiwa and buongiorno and a whole host of things. And all of a sudden, my mind suddenly went, actually, all of this early intervention and all of this work that we've been doing with Angus and all of the focus on getting him to communicate, he's doing it in his own way. And for the first time I looked at him and he was playing a game we'd not taught him. He'd obviously picked it up, learnt it and knew how to navigate and use an iPad. So I said to Dad, well, if Angus can use it, surely you can use it. there's something wrong with you if you think you can't. So since that day, and that was almost a year and a half ago now, Angus's iPad has become his major communication device, ranging from him asking what he wants for dinner to him telling me how he's feeling. If he's got a sore head, he gets his iPad and he tells me I've got a sore head, to him using it as a play device. And so for me, with my children and the job that I've got, suddenly technology for me is not just about the work that I do, but it's a passion that's driven by the desire to make sure that my kids, when they hit their adolescent years, are in a great space and don't feel isolated, left out, vulnerable, and that they know how to ensure that they get the best out of life. Whether they're a little boy like Angus who has quite a severe disability and can't speak, or whether it's someone who's as robust as Holly, who I think will probably sail through life, or Harry, who probably will be quite sensitive and need to engage and get a bit more support. I think the reality is that every single person is different, and it's not a one-size-fits-all in mental health. And you often hear people talk about mental health as being, it's a diagnosis. When we talk about mental health, we talk about mental health and well-being. The focus on the strengths of people, the capacity of people to shine in the face of adversity. So that's a little bit about me. To the work of the Young and Well CRC. Essentially, we are made up of a collective of organisations who have a passion and an interest in ensuring that all young people are happy, safe, well and resilient. And most fundamentally important to us, and it's a research centre, so we do research, but the most important thing is that young people are at the centre of that. And there's a whole host of reasons for it. This is our Youth's Brains Trust. We have 20 young people each year. The wonderful Gaz sitting in the front row supports our young people to come in and sit alongside Australia's leading scientists, people like Pat McGorry and Ian Hickey and Lena Sanchi from Uni Melb and a whole host of others, people from RMIT and VU, to really say, how can we listen to the voices of young people so that we understand what it is that they do in their day-to-day life, and how do we embrace that and use that in a way that's going to improve mental health and well-being. When we ask young people, well, why is this so important? It feels like a no-brainer to young people, but when you talk to anyone over the age of 30, they simply do not get the whole technology world. So young people say our real world is both online and offline. Older people say, oh, there's this divide and the online world is not real, and those friends that you have on Facebook are not your real friends. Importantly, in having young people sit alongside our researchers and our service providers, we allow them to explain it in their words. Young people say, well, it's how we communicate. It's a part of who we are and what we do. Computers have been a part of our entire lives, and I know when I look at my 3 kids, they literally, Holly will go up to the TV and try to swipe it because she thinks it's an iPad. We are the last generation to know a world without computers. And I think importantly around mental health, because it is still so stigmatised, it provides flexibility and confidentiality. And so a big question for us, and what we ask our partners in this, is how many of your services are actually using technologies, and how are you using them to engage with young people to think about both the promotion of mental health and well-being, but also in the treatment of mental illnesses. But that's not the job of today. That's a little bit about us. The job of today is to again convince you that playing and gaming is good for your mental health. So I'm going to showcase a few of the projects that come out of the Young and Well CRC, but if you jump onto the website or join up the network, there's a whole host of other projects looking at a range of different technologies that are really interested in how we can use technology to improve mental health. So this is the first report that's come out of our gaming research group, a group from QUT, RMIT, Murdoch University and Johns Hopkins over in the US. And basically what they did was say, okay, well, what is it about mental health that we need to understand, and how can we frame it in a way that helps us understand whether games are good for you or bad for you? And I think it'd be fair to say any time you pick up the paper, any time you read an article that's been written by the media, it is about how terrible games are for the mental health of young people and how it adds to violence. So basically this report, led by Daniel Johnson, who is a young researcher from QUT, he looked at it and he said, well, we'll put a framework around it, and it's called the Seligman Framework. It's about not just mental health, but how you can flourish in a world. Good morning, Doug Millen. I did wonder whether you were coming or not. Your absence was well noted. But it's lovely to see you here.
I apologise.
This is Doug. We've been friends for years. Sorry, Doug. I'll get into trouble. I will get into trouble for that, I'm sure. So basically they took the flourishing framework and said, okay, well, what is it about games that might be good for your mental health? They looked at about 200 studies from across the world, and essentially they said, research suggests that video games and games played in moderation can be great for people's emotional, social and psychological well-being. And they specifically said video games, and this is shown in the research and you can read the report, they positively influence young people's emotional state, so being able to manage the ups and downs, the highs and lows. Their self-esteem, so playing games and actually being successful in gameplay can increase your self-esteem. Your sense of optimism, if you're actually quite successful, you become far more optimistic. Vitality, resilience, engagement, relationships, sense of competence, self-acceptance, social connections and functioning. And I had the privilege of, about 2 months ago, going to the PAX gaming conference. Did anyone go to that conference? It was pretty amazing. When you think about gaming, and I think about gaming from the 80s, that's how old I am. You know, gaming in the 80s was very much the old school Vectrex, and you played alone or you might have played with your little brother, which I did. This was about social connection. This was about engagement. This was about enhanced communication, feeling valued, being able to participate in a really important and meaningful way. And when you think about gameplay and you think about mental health and well-being, they are all of the things that we know are really good for your mental health. So I am converted. I am a very big PAX supporter. And the report is, I think, the start of a journey for us to really understand what is it about gameplay and what is it about playing games that actually can be used to help you manage your day-to-day interactions in life. Okay, now thinking about the other things that are important in mental health and well-being, civic engagement. So being able to impact and change the world in a way that is important and fundamentally core. And we know that civic engagement is good for your mental health. So there are a number of games which are called games for good. They can be serious games or they can be commercial games that are created to do great things. And we've picked out two. There are many. One is called Free Rice. Has anyone played this game? Oh, see, I love this audience already. So Free Rice really was set up to educate young people about world famine. And it was set up in a way that for every answer that you get correct, 10 grains of rice are donated. And so it helps you understand how you could feed the world. And since its inception, and I just jumped on this morning and had a look, 96 billion grains of rice have been donated worldwide. So when you think about us in Australia playing this game and the influence and the impact that that might have in developing countries, that is a phenomenal way of engaging in gameplay for civic reasons. Half the Sky, has anyone read the book? Fantastic book. It's the sort of book that you start reading and you can't put down and you realise it's 3 o'clock in the morning and you should really be asleep because you're going to be woken up at 6 o'clock with in your bed. So Half the Sky is about stories of women and younger women in developing countries, and it talks about some of the challenges around health, education, literacy. And the book was written by 2 journalists, fabulous book, but they've now introduced it into a Facebook game. So again, it's a game that's created to engage and create play and educate young people. But again, it's set up that each time you play the game, you win or you go through different areas and money is donated. So they've raised $500,000 since its startup, and I think it started in March, April. I'm getting a nod from Emma, so yes. 1 million players so far. So 2 examples of gameplay, playing for good and playing for civic engagement. Now this is an oldie and a goodie, and Doug, who is now working at the reachout.com, will remember this. Back in 2006, we were really interested in how we could increase engagement with young men. And we worked with Beyond Blue and Sony Foundation and said, well, what we want to do is look at whether we can use gaming, not gamification, but gaming itself, to improve mental health and wellbeing. And we really want to focus on young men because that's the most difficult group to actually ensure that they get any help. So Reach Out Central was created, and Again, it's probably old and clunky now. 2006 was a reasonably long time ago. But in its day, it was probably the most innovative approach to improving mental health for young men. And basically, it's built around the premise of cognitive behavioural therapy, which is you understand the consequences of your actions and you practice different scenarios which help you understand what might happen in a different way. And it's about reframing your thinking so that you start to think in a more positive way, and you start to make better choices that improve mental health and wellbeing. And it was built around 4 characters, and you chose which character you wanted to do, and based on your gameplay and where you ended up in the game, you either on a happy sort of weird throbbing meter thing, you could see how your mood improved, or if you made poor choices, your mood decreased. But basically it was designed so that you could see, I've been to a party, I don't know anyone, I feel nervous, I feel anxious, I feel tense, so I drink too much. Some of the consequences that might happen from that. And did a nice randomised controlled trial on it and showed that it was effective. So again, really serious topic, mental health, but looking at gaming and how it could be used to improve mental health and wellbeing. This is one of the projects from the Young and Well CRC. It's probably my personal favourite, mainly because there's a little boy called Bailey who came to one of our board meetings with his mum and presented on what the lab has meant for him. And the lab is a project which is run out of Victoria University. Anyone here from VU? No? And it's a partnership with VU and Oztron. And Oztron is a tech company. And basically the guys from Oztron said, look, we've got all the tech resources, we're skilled, we've got computers, we want to set up a lab and we want to open it up to young people who have autism spectrum disorder. So young people who are high functioning but have autism spectrum disorder. We want to set it up so that young people can come in and they can engage in the technologies and they can play games and they can create games and they can build games. But at the same time, we create a safe hub for them so that they feel connected, they feel valued, they feel that what they're interested in is important. And the most important thing from it is not that these young people are going in and sitting in a lab and playing computer games, but rather, 5 minutes, but rather that they've got a social connection with the other young people who are in there. And so as a part of the lab, they're learning social skills. And this is just a quick flip of our infographic, but essentially why this is important is because rates of autism are increasing. Young people often fall through the gaps. They are socially awkward. They often don't understand social cues. So they're often young people who don't do well at school. They're often young people who don't go on to employment because they don't do well in interviews. And so what the lab was designed to do, and it's predominantly young men, so what the lab is designed to do is to ensure that this is a way of engaging young people, but also teaching them life skills at the same time. And preliminary results, and we've just funded a PhD, it's looking incredibly promising as a way of teaching young people with autism social skills so that they can engage in schooling, they do feel connected, they do feel valued, and then they've got greater job prospects. So I'm going to finish on this one, and Emma told me that I wouldn't have time for the last two, so that's all good. Who has used a Jawbone UP? Well, of course you guys have. A few people. This, I think, is probably in the mental health space one of the most exciting things that we're looking at. The Jawbone UP is basically a wristband that you pop on. It has a mobile app that goes with it. And each morning and each night you plug it into your iPhone or your phone, smartphone, and it gives you a reading of how much activity you've done and how much sleep you've had, and whether that sleep is good quality sleep, so deep sleep or light sleep. And the reason this is so important is because we know that physical activity and sleep is good for your mental health and your wellbeing. So what we're saying now to our partner organisations like Headspace, who run youth mental health sites, what we're saying to organisations who provide support to young people is if you incorporate this into some of your clinical practice and care, this is a really neat way that young people can keep track of what's happening for them. And if they choose to, they can share with you their data. So if they don't sleep for 3 nights in a row, you know that they might be struggling, that there might be something going on. If it looks as though they're not getting enough exercise, they're not getting out of the house each day, which we know is really good for your mental health, then you can have a conversation about that. So I think, if anything, the next steps for us in the world of mental health and wellbeing is looking at how we can use new and emerging technologies to enhance clinical practice, to improve overarchingly the mental health and the wellbeing of all young people, but I think most importantly how we can do it in a way that is actually engaging and fun for young people. So I'm going to finish there. Thank you.